It's the late 1920s. Jazz is exploding out of speakeasies and dance halls across America. The big bands are rising. Radio is turning local talent into national sensations overnight. And in the middle of all of it, a young woman from a small Indian reservation in eastern Washington state is about to change the sound of popular music. In the history of jazz and swing, some names are shouted from the rooftops: Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, Billie Holiday, Bing Crosby. And then there are the names that somehow slipped into the shadows. Names that were once famous, shaping the sound everyone else followed, but over time were almost forgotten. One of those names is Mildred Bailey. Known in her day as the Queen of Swing, the Rocking Chair Lady, and Mrs. Swing, Mildred Bailey was one of the most important jazz singers of the 1930s. She helped invent the vocal swing style that singers like Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday, Bing Crosby, and Tony Bennett would carry forward. But Mildred Bailey was also something else. She was a woman of Native American heritage, born into the Coeur d'Alene tribe of the inland Northwest. In a racially segregated 1930s America, she never tried to hide that part of her identity. Bailey grew up spending much of her childhood on or near the Coeur d'Alene Reservation in Idaho. Her great-grandfather was a prominent figure in the tribe, known as a head speaker and song leader who adapted Catholic hymns into Coeur d'Alene musical traditions. That blending of indigenous melody, rhythm, and European church music was part of the soundscape of Mildred's earliest years. By the time she was a teenager, she was already performing, playing piano and singing in movie theaters, working speakeasies during Prohibition, hustling for every stage and microphone she could find, and for a time worked in a music store in Spokane. That store, Bailey's Music Shop, a coincidence with her eventual surname, became a crucial meeting place. Her younger brother Al Rinker hung around the shop and brought a friend, a young singer named Bing Crosby. Mildred recognized something in Bing, and he recognized something in her. They formed a musical friendship that would change both of their lives. At home and at parties, Mildred introduced Crosby to the music she loved, the records of Louis Armstrong, Bessie Smith, and other early jazz and blues artists. According to Northwest histories, she was the one who opened his ears to this world, playing him sides and encouraging him to absorb the relaxed phrasing and rhythmic freedom of black jazz singers. In other words, before Crosby ever shaped American crooning, Mildred was shaping him. When Crosby and her brother arrived in Los Angeles in the mid-1920s, it was Mildred who helped them find work. She made introductions, she pushed doors open, and eventually she was the one who was instrumental in getting them an audition with the biggest band leader in America, Paul Whiteman. Her brother and Crosby joined Whiteman's outfit as part of the Rhythm Boys, and the rest, as they say, is history, Crosby's history. But the woman who launched that story was about to write one of her own. 3 years later, before Bing went solo, he returned the favor. He convinced Whiteman to give Mildred a chance. One story, half legend, half truth, says that Mildred invited Whiteman and some orchestra members to a going-away party, knowing he was a heavy beer drinker and promising homebrew. At some point during the evening, Crosby asked her to sing, as planned. She feigned embarrassment before asking Al to accompany her. She nailed it. Whiteman was impressed, asked for an encore, and by the end of the evening had arranged for her to appear on his Old Gold radio show. Within a year, Mildred Bailey became his highest-paid musician. With Whiteman's orchestra behind her, Bailey recorded in a style that was smoother than what came before, but unmistakably rooted in jazz. You could hear it in every note. The way she bent a melody, the way she placed a phrase just a hair behind the beat, the way her voice moved with the kind of rhythmic intelligence that most singers of her era couldn't even comprehend. She wasn't just singing the notes on the page, she was swinging them as she was reinventing them in real time. It was during these years that she recorded the song that would become her calling card, Hoagie Carmichael's Rockin' Chair. Most people who knew the tune at the time thought of it as a novelty duet. Bailey took it and turned it into something completely different, a sentimental ballad full of aching warmth and effortless beauty. That one recording earned her the nickname she carried for the rest of her life, the Rockin' Chair Lady. She also cut records with the Casa Loma Orchestra and the Dorsey Brothers, and just like that she was standing at the dead centre of the swing revolution. And then she went and doubled down. In 1933, Bailey married Red Norvo, a vibraphonist who had also played with Whiteman. After their marriage, Norvo started his own band, and Bailey launched a parallel solo career, recording with top jazz players, performing widely on radio, building a reputation that was entirely her own. But around 1936, when Norvo's band started to struggle, he brought Mildred in as the featured vocalist. And a legend was born, or rather, a double legend. The press began calling them Mr. and Mrs. Swing. The Norvo-Bailey collaboration, often with sophisticated arrangements by Eddie Sauter, produced some of the finest swing recordings of the decade. Jazz critics still praise these sides for their subtlety and interplay, the way Bailey's voice moved through the ensemble like another instrument, conversational and rhythmically precise, never forcing, never over-singing. Some critics go so far as to argue that these recordings rival or surpass more famous collaborations of the era in terms of nuance and genuine swing feel. The band lasted until 1939. The marriage held on a little longer, but not much. They separated in the early 1940s. Bailey continued solo. To understand why Mildred Bailey mattered, you have to understand what singing sounded like before her. In the late 1920s and early 1930s, most popular vocalists still carried the mannerisms of the vaudeville stage. Heavy vibrato, operatic affectations, a stiff formality that kept the singer at a distance from the song. Bailey came from somewhere else entirely. She had grown up listening to Ethel Waters and Bessie Smith, black artists who understood that a song could breathe, that a rhythm could bend, that the voice was not a separate thing from the band, but a part of it. Bailey absorbed those lessons and developed a sound that was distinctly her own. Light, rhythmically precise, conversational. She placed her syncopations in front of the beat or behind it with such natural ease that the effect was not of someone performing a trick, but of someone simply speaking the truth in musical form. Because of this, she became one of the earliest white vocalists to truly swing, in the jazz sense of the word, and her influence reached further than most people realize. Bing Crosby, whose career she had helped launch, adopted elements of her easy phrasing. Tony Bennett has cited her. Even Billie Holiday, who came to prominence around the same time, is said to have admired Bailey's work. She was not copying black music, she was listening to it, learning from it and translating it through her own experience, an experience shaped by growing up on the border between cultures, the daughter of a Coeur d'Alene woman and a German immigrant in a corner of America where those borders were real and felt. Through the 1930s, Bailey's career was a constellation of records, live appearances at top ballrooms and nightclubs, and extensive radio work. She was a genuine star, her voice familiar to national audiences, her name on the marquee at the best rooms in New York. Even as her fame grew, Mildred's identity remained complicated in the eyes of the public. Critics hailed her as one of the first white singers to be compared with black artists like Ethel Waters, Bessie Smith, and those influenced by Louis Armstrong's syncopation. But this label ignored her strong Native American heritage, which she herself was proud of and did not hide. Within the jazz world, musicians often didn't focus on her race. The scene was already integrated by necessity. Some people assumed she was black. Others thought she was of mixed race, guessing the wrong combinations. Her image became so entangled that when the US Postal Service issued a series of stamps honouring great black blues and jazz musicians, including Bessie Smith, Billie Holiday, Muddy Waters, Robert Johnson, and others, they included Mildred Bailey as the only non-African American in the set and printed the wrong birth year on her stamp. In an essay on Native American jazz, she is quoted reflecting on how indigenous singing had shaped her technique. She said that the native music she grew up with straightened out the kinks in a soprano voice, removed the boom from a contralto, and forced a singer to cover a wide range of notes to get by. That training, she believed, helped create the clarity, range, and control listeners heard in her jazz performances. By the 1930s, she had created a sound that formed a bridge between the old blues belters, figures like Bessie Smith and Ma Rainey, and the breezier, more conversational jazz interpretations of Ella Fitzgerald and Billie Holiday. You can hear Bailey's influence over Holiday, even though Bailey's style is a bit more precise, her enunciation clearer, and her tone less overtly sultry. Tony Bennett later said, "From 16 to 20 years old, the only thing I listened to was Mildred Bailey. I just said, I want to sing like her." For him and many others, she was the template, and yet, over time, she slipped from the center of the story. Even though her recordings have stayed in print, her Columbia catalogue has been reissued in box sets for decades. She remains a cult figure, absolutely loved by her fans, but largely unknown to the broader public. Mildred Bailey suffered from diabetes for much of her adult life, complicated by obesity that grew more severe over the years. She was hospitalized in 1938, again in 1943, again in 1949. Each time she was pulled away from the stage at exactly the moments when she needed to be on it, when careers were being made and remade, when the industry was shifting beneath everyone's feet. The big bands were breaking up, bebop was arriving. The world that had made Mildred Bailey a star was disappearing, and she was too sick to fight for her place in the one that was replacing it. And then there was the money. Despite years of stardom, despite records and radio shows and sold-out nightclubs, Bailey was often broke. Bing Crosby, the man she had pulled out of obscurity and handed a career on a silver platter, reportedly lent her money on multiple occasions just to keep her afloat. Let that sink in. The woman who made Bing Crosby had to borrow money from Bing Crosby. If that doesn't tell you everything about how this industry treats the people who build it, nothing will. Her last major engagement was with clarinetist Joe Marsala in Chicago in 1950. The following year, on December 12, 1951, Mildred Bailey died in Poughkeepsie, New York. She was 44 years old. In the years after her death, something strange happened to Mildred Bailey's legacy, or rather, something didn't happen. She was not forgotten all at once, she simply receded. The histories were written, and her name appeared less and less. The singers she had influenced became icons. The era she had helped define was remembered through other faces. Recent scholarship has begun to ask the uncomfortable question, who erased Mildred Bailey? Was it the changing tastes of the post-war era? Was it her health which cut her career short just as she might have entered a second act? Was it something about being a woman, and a woman of Native American heritage, in an industry that had little room for either? Writers and historians have emphasized that Bailey did not hide her indigenous background, even in the racially stratified America of the 1930s. She was proud of who she was. And yet, that identity was often smoothed over or ignored in the telling of her story, when her story was told at all. If history forgot to keep saying her name, her records did not. They are still there, still spinning, still swinging, still carrying the sound of a life that began on tribal land in Idaho and ended in a New York hospital, and in between helped define the golden age of jazz and swing. Mildred Bailey was a foundational voice in American music. Her combination of swing, subtlety, rhythmic brilliance, and emotional clarity helped shape the entire language of jazz and popular singing that came after her. Every crooner who ever leaned into a microphone and sang a lyric like they were having a conversation owes something to Mildred Bailey. Every vocalist who ever placed a phrase behind the beat with a wink and a smile is walking a path she carved. She was the first woman to front a major big band. She was the Queen of Swing. She was the rocking chair lady. She was Mrs. Swing. She was the woman who made Bing Crosby. And she was, above everything else, a voice, light, precise, generous, and absolutely unbreakable, that the world tried to forget and failed. Her name was Mildred Bailey, and it is long past time you knew it.